Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to this NILG webinar, What Still Matters, Reclaiming Veteran and Disability Inclusion Amid Uncertainty. My name is Sheila Abram, and I'm a partner with the employment law firm of Fisher and Phillips, and I serve as our government contract compliance and reporting practice group leader. I'm also one of the members of the board of directors for the NILG, and it is my privilege and pleasure to welcome our special guests with us today. Before I do a quick introduction, I want to go over a few housekeeping matters with you. First, this session is being recorded, as you probably heard a lovely voice tell you when you entered the session, so just bear that in mind. Also, we'll be sending out the presentation later this week, so we will take care of that for you. And then additionally, we are going to save some time for questions at the end of our presentation. Feel free to go ahead and drop them in the chat function for you, but know that we have reserved time at the end of the presentation to address those questions. And with those housekeeping matters out of the way, I want to take a moment and introduce our speakers for today. Joining us, we have Meaghan Walls, CEO of the Center for Disability Inclusion. With over 19 years of experience in assistive technology, rehabilitation engineering, and accessibility consulting, Meaghan has dedicated her career to helping employers build inclusive, barrier-free workplaces. She also leads Assistology LLC, where she partners with businesses to integrate universal design. Her expertise, combined with her personal passion for disability advocacy, makes her a powerful voice in advancing compliance into real people-first strategies. Please also join me in welcoming Rob Arndt, Marine Corps veteran and founder and CEO of BufferSprings, a veteran-led consultancy that helps employers transform their military talent programs from symbolic to systemic. After 14 years of service in the Marines, including 8 years in recruitment strategy, Rob experienced firsthand how broken the transition system can be. So, he built BufferSprings not just to fill hiring quotas, but to build real career pipelines and military effective HR systems. His work has helped Fortune 500 companies, federal contractors, and mission-driven organizations move beyond box checking to genuine, sustainable veteran hiring outcomes. Please join me in welcoming Meaghan and Rob. Thanks, guys.
Thank you, Sheila.
Thanks. Happy to be here.
Absolutely. We'll kick right over to presentation, right? No other further ado. Looks like we have everybody on here. So we've prepared, Meaghan and I have prepared a presentation for you to really balance what we're seeing around the space. So I'm going to get that pulled up now. We have a lot to share with you all today and a lot of candid things to cover. We've been a long way over the past year, but we still have a long way to go. So let me know once the screen is up and all of that is running, and then we can be off to the races.
You are good, Rob.
Beautiful. So to kick it off, thank you everyone for joining us today. Really appreciate you taking the time. I know there's a lot going on right now and a lot of things, especially around Veterans Day and Veterans Month. So I appreciate you taking this time with us. As Sheila had mentioned, my name is Rob Arndt. I am the founder and CEO of an organization called BufferSprings. And in a nutshell, we help federal contractors build real systems for veteran and military connected inclusion that work in practice and not just in policy somewhere. And I want to introduce my friend and collaborative speaker today, Meaghan. Meaghan, floor is all yours.
Yeah, thanks, Rob. I'm Meaghan Walls. I'm here today at the Center for Disability Inclusion. And at a high level, our focus is helping companies turn compliance into culture so that individuals with disabilities can thrive at work. And we do this through a lot of training and consultation across a lot of different industries.
Absolutely. And as we're going through the presentation today, we have a lot of ground to cover. Please put questions into the chat box. We'll try to get to them at the end. We're going to leave about 15 minutes for Q&A. We just don't want to hold up if we're talking about something on slide 3, but going to answer that question on slide 7. But we want to make sure we get to everyone's questions. We know there's a lot going on today, and we're helping to bring some sanity to the universe. We're here together because veteran inclusion and disability inclusion share a lot more in common than most people realize. These communities are often overlapping and have intersectionality, and the systems that are built to support both of these individual, conduits and talent flows are about to change in some pretty big ways and have changed in some pretty nondescript ways over the past 9 months since we've had this administration. And today we're going to peel back the onion on a lot of that. So strap in, we got a lot to cover, as I've said.
Yeah, and VEVRAA and Section 503 have really shaped how federal contractors approach hiring and inclusion and build their strategies for more than 50 years. This has been kind of the standard in the process. And so these two program systems were designed to create both accountability and opportunity.
And looking at it, I mean, fast forward 5+ decades later on both VEVRAA and 503, the world looks really different. But these policies are evolving, but maybe not at the same pace that the workplace is. And we all know that our workforce has changed. We're in a post-pandemic world, new world of work, whatever you want to call it. And the question now is whether our systems are actually able to keep up with the current way that the world of work is going.
Yeah, and that's really kind of what brought us all together today. We're going to talk about what's changing, what still matters, how to make sure that compliance and culture are working together instead of competing against each other. Because, regardless of some, maybe trains of or thought processes, you need both. You really do. They're both really important. So we hope that we'll show you what this can look like and how they work together for progress in this space.
Absolutely.
As we do a little bit more introduction, Sheila did a great job summarizing things, but we use an iceberg concept and graphic here to remind us that things related to inclusion, the aspects of who we are, what we bring to businesses in our roles that are create those cultures of belonging, they live below the surface, meaning you don't know about them unless we actively share them about ourselves, right? What people see what people see are our titles and credentials, but what they don't see are things related to lived experience that shapes the way that we work and we lead and connect with people.
This slide really says everything about how we approach this work, both for Meaghan and I. And Meaghan had mentioned universal design. That's actually how her and I met a few years ago, was kind of nerding out on that concept. But inclusion, it has to be intentional. It's not built from resumes. It's built from our people. And what we don't see is often what drives the work behind this. Even for myself, this is my lived work here in the full intersection of everything I've done in my adult life. I am a Marine Corps veteran. I served 14 years and got my butt kicked by transition. I proudly identify as a person with disabilities. I am neurodivergent. I do have chronic pain. I'll air out my own dirty laundry. I am 90% disabled, according to the Department of Veteran Affairs. That's some of the things that some of you may know about me if you've been around. And obviously this is NILG. This is like a family reunion. So shout outs to all my friends and colleagues and everything in the space. But I'm also a husband. I'm a father of 4 boys. My oldest son is at Parris Island right now, and he graduates as a Marine this Friday. So even though this wasn't figured out when I got out of the Marine Corps, I have to figure this out by the time that my son gets out. So he's becoming a Marine himself. I also have a 10-year-old son who is neurodivergent. So that helps me to really put, traction to this work because I care about the outcomes of it. Some other things you may not know about me is that I love music. I'm teaching myself how to play drums right now. I'm getting kind of decent. I collect 60s and 70s soul records, 80s and 90s hip hop records. I love being outdoors. I love hiking. I love kayaking. But these lived experiences shape everything that I do and everything that I built here at BufferSprings and the work that I do. It's not just about helping veterans find jobs. It's about helping employers build systems that don't waste our potential.
Yeah, and for me, this work's also very personal. What started as just exposure to the disability community through my mom's work up here in Omaha, Nebraska, where I reside, really bloomed into a passion for removing barriers to participation in all types of settings. And so I've spent nearly 2 decades in the disability inclusion space as an educator, an ADA coordinator, an accessibility consultant, championing these conversations and this work. But I'm also a wife. I'm a mom to 2 amazing kids. My oldest turned 12 yesterday. So those of you who've raised girls through their preteen years, just send me all your positive vibes because it's gotten really real. I have one of my daughters has ADHD. I live with chronic migraines, and so I know what it feels like to need systems that actually support people and create space for those conversations. But I also, like Rob, enjoy hiking. My happy place is often with a very large jigsaw puzzle where I don't have to talk to anybody. Um, I love plants. I have, I think, 32 house plants that my kids hate watering, and four large dogs. And, random fun fact is my favorite insect is a praying mantis, the creepy alien looking bugs. The reason we share a lot of these things is because it is these parts of our identities that create connection and find shared interests and help us build the culture that we need for compliance.
And that's why if you ever talk to Meaghan and I, like we lead these conversations a little bit differently than you may be used to. We're not here as talking heads representing some organization. We're bringing our lived experiences and lived experience that sit below the surface and turning those into real outcomes for the organizations that we partner with and the people that we represent and support that are near and dear to us and a part of our lives and intersectionality. This isn't work. For me, this is the civil rights movement. Like we've not taken care of our veterans. And, like any good Marine, I need something to fight. This is a fight that I'm willing to take on. So let's take a minute to simplify what's actually going on right now because there's a lot of noise and rah-rah out there about proposed changes.
Yeah. So, quick summary, the Department of Labor and OFCCP, they're reviewing two major rules right now. For Section 503, the government is proposing to remove the 7% disability utilization goal and asking contractors to focus more on measurable outcomes instead of percentages. And if you just said, well, how do I actually measure outcomes without data? We hear you, we feel you. We're going to talk about that today. They've also proposed retiring the self-ID of disability, the form, and exploring better ways, alternative ways to collect that data.
And for VEVRAA specifically, the Vietnam era Veterans Readjustment Assistance Act of 1974, the 5.1% veteran benchmark stays in place. And that was just changed, I think, June this year to 5.1%. But OFCCP wants to see proof that outreach efforts are effective. And whether it's OFCCP or DOL vets or whenever we find out who our government figures out who they want to be when they grow up and who's taking accountability of what, we can't pause on these initiatives. A few months ago and just closed, I think October 24th was the closing date, but public comments to the OFCCP were open. It was originally from until September 17th. Then they extended it to October 24th. But nothing is final yet. For now, our systems need to keep up and running. And we can share a link to that request for public comments. I think some of them were seen. I know that CDI submitted comments. We submitted comments from BufferSprings. I know NILG and even New England ILG group that I'm a part of had submitted comments on this. But we need to speak and tell our voices and our stories from these companies and not let policy just do what it wants to do internally.
Yeah, and the comments, by and large, expressed a lot of concern and opposition to just a blanket removal. So hopefully they take that into account. We don't know anything yet, but the key takeaway in this space is that the rules are changing, but the mission and the work isn't. The things that we're trying to do. So employers are still expected to show meaningful progress and not just activity. And this is a time that kind of pushes to rethink what that looks like and how you can really activate in that space to demonstrate that progress amid changing landscapes.
And one of the things that I want to say is we work with a lot of employers and we talk with a lot of employers in the space, and it seems like waiting is a strategy right now. And I will warn you that waiting is not a strategy. Even if you are audited or someone comes to look at your data, they're going to be looking at 3 years of data. And if you're waiting 9 months for some other policy to change, it's going to be seen by the government. But not only that, it's going to be seen by your people. Don't do this for policy. Don't do this for Uncle Sam. Do this for your people and your best people at work to create opportunities there. So fast forwarding some of the changes. Meaghan, please.
Yeah. So Section 503, right, is designed to make sure that at its highest level, right? To make sure that individuals with disabilities have equal access to opportunity. And the 7% goal is a goal, never a quota, right? It's meant to be a mirror to help organizations understand their demographics, and identify gaps between what they're intending to do and what the reality is so that they can make plans to bridge that gap.
And the proposed change doesn't remove accountability. I want to be clear on that. It just refocuses it. The message from OFCCP and the government is clear. If the numbers aren't moving, it's time to look at culture, systems, and leadership, and not just compliance reports. Even the veteran benchmark has just hovered between, over the last 4 years, from 5.4% to 5.1% based on our numbers and demographics. That's not progress, people. And a lot of our organizations, and you may be able to see this from your Vets 4212s that you just submitted about a month and a half ago, the needle is not moving. So what are we doing? Where are we going? Or how are we going to fix this?
Yeah, and so we want you to think about these opportunities as a initiative to move from counting people, checking the boxes, to making people count and focusing on culture.
Absolutely. Love that quote. So switching gears a little bit from Section 503, and there's a lot of intersectionality between individuals with disabilities and veterans, so we can get into the weeds on that here in a minute. But for VEVRAA, the fundamentals have not changed. The 5.1% benchmark is still in place, and outreach and documentation requirements still remain for your organizations, whether it's paused. Right now, I use the analogy that we have this traffic light that is still a traffic light, but people are going through it, but there's no sheriff in town. But eventually, somebody's going to be seeing that. So let's not develop bad habits.
Yeah. Now's not the time to start misbehaving, right? But what is changing in this process is the emphasis. OFCCP will continue to expect documentation. As Rob said, they're going to look at 3 years, so there's stuff that still has to happen. But their emphasis will put more weight on whether the outreach that you're having to report on, right? The reporting on your efforts, if that's manifesting into actual results that can be measured and demonstrated.
And now it's not going to be about more activity. We were used to the era of good faith efforts that we could just go to a golf tournament or go to a job fair and say that we use the ESDS and shotgun blasted our jobs out there. But it's not about doing more activity. It's about doing what actually works and showing what's working. In recent audits before the pause and everything else, and even the CSAL lists that were on there, we had the OFCCP actually asking for community-based organization lists and calling those organizations to verify that they are in fact working with your organization. So they're going above and beyond to actually look at accountability. And that's what's been missing in both of the spaces. Executive Order 11246 kind of overshadowed VEVRAA and 503. And when Executive Order 11246 was gone, we thought that we could just throw the baby out with the bathwater with our other two programs, but those are laws. Those are not executive orders. And we're going to get into the weeds of that. But again, it's not about doing more activity. It's about doing what works and showing what is working. And that's where the change is going to take place.
Yeah, I think you hit on a really important kind of like key element too, is the Section 503, VEVRAA, the ADA, which we're not talking about today. All of those things are written into law. Those are not changed by the rescindance of the executive order. So it's important to Rob's point, like make sure you're assessing and separating one from the other as you're knowing what to do. Now, Section 503 and VEVRAA focus on two different populations with a similar goal of equitable systems and real inclusion at the outcomes.
And to caveat from that, like here's the part that most people miss is we're looking at these as two different things or siloing these programs. The latest stat that I read is that 47% of post 9/11 veterans, so our current era veterans, also are service-connected disabled veterans, according to the Department of Veteran Affairs. So that's nearly half of our population covered under both laws. And that's just self-identifying veterans and the ones that are in there that aren't in the know yet. And this is going to change as veterans are becoming more educated. This is part of it. When I got out of the Marine Corps on Friday when I was told I was 10 feet tall, bulletproof, and the most feared creature in the world. And then on Monday, when I had my VA visit, I was told that I was 90% disabled and that I am now a person with disabilities. So a lot of us are still getting over that kind of internal, conundrum of that, but things are changing. We're educating folks more. Even the veterans that we work with, we're encouraging to self-identify as veterans, as people with disabilities. And if you don't want to hire them, good. They're not supposed to work there at your company anyway. That's kind of our gist of it. But
yeah, and I think with that, Rob, is the numbers are never going to be 100%. It's not up to you whether, they check the box, identify as not. And as some of those identity adjustments may happen and after service, they may identify as a veteran, and it might be 5 years down the road where they identify as both, and you get that additional data. But the more that you can build the culture where that is an intentional demographic that you find value in and that you're bringing into your workforce, that data is going to come along as a result of your culture efforts. Which means that your compliance efforts in one area, disability or veterans, right, directly impacts the other. So the more that we treat them as intersecting systems, the stronger the results of our efforts become.
100%. And this is, like Meaghan said, the key word here is systems. We're not just hiring veterans and individuals with people with disabilities because of what they represent. We're hiring them because of what they bring to the table as a dynamic talent source that we may not have looked at objectively in the past. Well, we can't identify that without systems.
Yep. And to be clear, these changes that we're navigating with OFCCP and some of these proposed rule changes don't necessarily mean less enforcement. It just may look a little different. OFCCP still conducting reviews under both 503 and VEVRAA, the speed of which we don't know. There's a lot that behind the curtain that we don't know, but the expectation is enforcement will still happen and reviews are still happening.
And with that, and you're exactly right. And they're still expecting documentation. They're still expecting outreach plans. Again, waiting and pausing is not a strategy. Some organizations have frozen their efforts altogether. And I will tell you that is probably the most dangerous way to approach this. The only difference is that they're going to be asking more important questions as to what is actually working. Not that you waved a flag or you hugged a hero or anything else that we're doing on our websites, but are we actually bringing these people in and not only hiring them, but retaining them, growing them, and diversifying our workforce intentionally?
Yeah, so if you're a compliance leader, which a lot of you on this call, in this meeting, in this thing probably are, keep your plans audit ready. Keep that documentation in check. But also be ready to show the story behind the numbers, the efforts that you're making, whether it's through outreach, development, and engagement, in the ERGs and the other community partners. Make sure that you're integrating culture building efforts as part of your compliance journey.
100%. And this is where we're seeing the real shift happening. Compliance is employer driven. It's about forms. It's about numbers and requirements. Culture is employee driven. And that is about trust and inclusion and belonging. I have a quote that I use often, and it's compliance is a reaction to policy. Culture is a reflection of leadership. If you don't have a strong culture for veterans and individuals with disabilities, that's not on us. That's not on the government. That's on you and your leadership team of not creating equitable sources and ways for us to grow within your organization. And that's real.
Yeah, we talk about this a lot. Compliance is a foundation. It's the price of admission for what your company is built on. We also, even just thinking about that iceberg that we talked about, compliance, that's that stuff above the waterline. That's the demographics, you're checking the box. But the conversation, the self-disclosure is a reflection of your culture. When people can raise their hand publicly and tell their story and bring that impact into the workplace, that is reflective of your culture, that self-disclosure piece. Self-ID is required by law. The other is voluntary, right? And based on culture. Self-ID comes from data that's collected. And the self-disclosure piece is built on trust that allows us to tell our truth in how we show up in spaces. So when you build culture You build the culture, more people will tell their story, more people will share about themselves, which then strengthens your compliance.
You absolutely nailed it. And to caveat from that, we can't fix disclosure problems with more forms and more paperwork. We have to fix them by building real relationships and trust with our individuals. I always talk about companies, and Megan and I just hopped off another webinar, and someone had said, we're putting out a self-ID campaign to show how to do this, but we don't talk about why. Why should I be self-identifying? To give the government my information? I served in the Marine Corps for 14 years. The government has my information. They don't need it from you, Mr. Employer Man. So what are we doing to build trust? What are you doing with that information? And that is the difference between self-ID and self-disclosure. One is policy. One is building a reflection of your culture. We can't fix it by more forms. We have to fix it by building relationships with real people.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And that communication piece, that why, what are you going to do with this? Why does this matter? How does this benefit our teams and our workplace? That's a huge part of the story that will influence the compliance. Because when we look at data right now, it's flat. The self-ID rate for individuals with disabilities, remains under 5%. Veteran unemployment is still around 18%. And the benchmarks really haven't moved more than, significantly in many years.
And this tells us something important. This isn't about bad policy. It's about systems that haven't built enough trust for people to self-identify when we're just doing it for a reason. I had a client that we worked with, I was with a couple months ago, and I went to an ERG meeting, and I went in and I said, raise your hand if you're a veteran in the room, and 88 hands went in the air. And then I said, keep your hand in the air if you self-identified in the HRIS system, and 12 hands stayed in the air. This company thinks they have a veteran hiring problem. They don't. They have a veteran cultural problem where our people aren't standing up and self-identifying. So that changes the way that you even go to work and the way that you go to business and hunting for more people that you already have. You're going shopping before you actually look what's in the refrigerator of what you already have that you can eat, and it's foolish.
Yeah, we run into this too, where, companies may say, we don't really have employees with disabilities. Well, 29% of US adults outside of the military demographic identify as having a disability. So they're just not telling their story in your systems because of the culture, right? So flat data means stagnant culture. And that's what some of these proposed changes are trying to fix. At the heart of it is, how do we further compliance, and do it in a way that's more reliant on culture, so that we can measure outcomes clearly and actually make progress in these spaces.
Absolutely. And this is the part of the story that usually gets overlooked. Many veterans are also, as I stated, individuals with disabilities. We navigate both systems, but we also fall through the cracks of each because there's no ways for me to dual identify. I either have to identify as a veteran or as an individual with disabilities, or I don't know what you're doing with that information. And depending on where I'm at in my journey, at one point when I was applying to jobs when I got out of the Marine Corps, I just stopped self-identifying because I thought the fact that I was a service member and a person with disabilities was actually blocking me from getting into companies. So our systems may be creating blockers and biases that we're not even aware of. So people are falling through the cracks of both systems.
Yeah, and that's an important reminder to, audit your ATS system, understand what's being collected, how it's working, how AI is working for or against you in these processes. Because if your systems, whether that's technology or process, are separating the veteran and disability conversations in those hiring efforts, you lose the ability to see the overlap, and recognize or identify where opportunities are, where gaps are, where changes need to be made, and what conversations need to be had. So the next phase or era of the compliance story really needs to be intersectional if we want to create cultures within companies that are centered on belonging, that then help drive compliance.
Exactly. Where these two laws meet, and again, laws are laws, where these two laws meet, one workforce lives, and these are your people. Our companies can only be as strong as our people allow them to be. And we have to strengthen our workforce for our people. It's not the widgets we make or the, products that we produce. It's the people that do those things on a daily basis. And we have to think of our workforce, not just checking a box and keeping the dragon at bay.
Yeah, and I'm gonna tell a little story, little case study, I guess, to just really highlight right, intersection of military service and disability, but reflective of culture, because the outcomes could have gone very differently if the culture within the business didn't recognize the value. So there was a mechanic. He was an Apache helicopter mechanic in the military. So imagine what it takes, right, to keep helicopters in a sandy environment running safely, and all the different pieces. Uh, During his military service, he experienced a traumatic brain injury through an IUD, and went through extensive rehab. And after a couple of years of rehab, was ready to re-enter the workforce and got an interview, went through all the skills development and testing and processing in a coffee manufacturing plant. So mechanic and machine operator, and had blown every competency test out of the water along the way. Get them to first day orientation. There is a 5-step checklist to start the machine up. And he could not keep those steps in order in his brain. So just a result of, his brain healing and the damage from the injury, the lists were a challenge. Now, the manager so what happened is manager, coworkers, were coming over and helping restart the machine. Now, at the end of his first day, they could have said, you know what, we didn't sign up for this. This is too much of a pain. Thank you for coming in, but we're going to go a different direction. But this manager saw the value in all of the skills, the transferable skills and the application of skills in the space. And when they were at home, their high schooler was writing a report and was inspired by the note cards that were on the desk, and took 5 note cards, wrote those 5 steps down, hole punched it, and put a metal ring through it, right? I don't know, 50 cents worth of supplies. Brought that and hung it on the machine. Got to work the next day. How many times do you think someone else had to help him start his machine? None, right? So that's just that's great. One person's barrier removed, right? But what happened is people around started being like, "Ooh, that's a really great idea. Why don't all of our machines have that?" Then as it progressed, it had startup, stop, shut down, tag out, lockout, all of the different things that needed to happen in the machine, and narrative. Then they added pictures. And what happened is the onboarding time for all their roles went down, and their cross training was stronger as they dealt with staffing. So zero cost, simple solution, removed a barrier for one person, and it created a cultural change in how they operated and how that measure of inclusion impacted everything on a business level.
And that's what Meaghan and I were kind of nerding out about when we met, was that universal design concept of this. Like, that's not a compliance win. That's not an accommodation. That's a culture win. That's a company win that started off as a small fix and then became a company-wide practice. It will help with faster onboarding for new people. It's a good refresher. Even if managers want to go out there and find out what their people are doing, they can simply pick up a card and do that. Like, that's change for our whole organization. That's a win, taking from something that we have from a diverse population. I absolutely love that story.
And the other thing is, it's really important. Rob had mentioned maybe earlier in this, maybe it was just in the one we were on before, but if your essential tasks and your job descriptions need to be regularly audited, what a better way to vet your process than to have easy access for that person who's auditing to make sure that everything lines up, right? There's just so many different ways that it can impact the business. And so these efforts of inclusion happen when people pay attention to the barriers in front of them and they look for opportunities on like what that can also benefit.
Absolutely. It's that universal design concept and looking at things intentionally for our people, for the betterment of everyone around us, not to check a box or save costs or any of those other things that are important to our business, but our people are our most important resource. And if we take care of them, we're taking care of ourselves. So I will say this, in the 25 years that I've been having intersectionality to this work, every compliance gap that we find hides within a cultural gap. It's fear of disclosure. It's inaccessibility of systems. It's lack of ownership for internal processes. Those aren't form problems. That's not changing the verbiage on your self-identification request or whatever. Those are leadership problems and reflections of culture that we need to objectively look at.
Yeah, absolutely. It's about embedding inclusion through behavioral outcomes, how your leaders are showing up, following through, and involving people across all the demographics in the processes.
Absolutely. And it doesn't matter what's, out there. Executive Order 11246 is gone. VEVRAA and 503 are still there. Most inclusive organizations that we see and ones that are doing this well, they don't rely on policies or the government anyway. They rely on people who give a damn about the outcomes and not the optics of what's going on. They rely on people who care about your people. And that's the only way that this works.
Yeah. And if these numeric goals go away, we can't lose accountability in this space. We frequently say that a company's strongest recruitment strategy is a rock star retention strategy. So take care of the
Excellent.
people that you have, and that puts you in a position for stronger recruiting, and other metrics that you can measure. So with some of the things that we're used to measuring, if those go away, we need new metrics, right? So tracking disclosure safety, accommodation resolution time, retention, accessibility, elements in leadership behavior.
It all adds up, and it's all about our people, not a form that we submit to the government once a year.
Yeah, so so numeric goals, we're not sure where all of those are going to land, but it's a time for innovation, right? It's a time where you can be looking at what matters to your company, to your culture, and start thinking about data a little bit differently that also shows the impact of your efforts.
The indicators from your data tell you if culture is actually working. We can't measure inclusion by how many people that we hire, right? They're not a part of we don't know anything about them. They're brand new. This is a brand new relationship. We measure it on how many people stay, how many people grow, how many people escalate. Looking at your employee referral program, even for veterans know and more importantly, trust other vets. If your vets aren't referring other veterans in your organization, that's a cultural reflection that I don't want to tell my sisters and brothers to work here because I may be trying to find my way out of there. So something we have to look at from an inclusion standpoint is how many people are staying, accelerating, growing, and are actual proponents or brand ambassadors of us, or are they people that are punching a clock and taking off that shirt as soon as they get out of the parking lot because they don't want to be seen near you. They're just getting the job. So look at those indicators as culture and not just your hiring numbers. Every time that we look at vets 4212 forms or get into a company, they're hiring 1,000 vets, but they're losing 999 every year. And we're not making progress. Same thing with individuals with disabilities. As Meaghan stated earlier, 29% of people out there have a disability, yet the benchmark is set at 7%. There's a disconnect there. 1 in 4 people, but we can't even get 7% of people to stand up when any one of us can end up as a person with disabilities at any given time. We need to take care of these people because it could be us tomorrow. We have a saying in the Marine Corps that you got hit by the 1630 bus. I could get hit by that bus, and now I'm classified here. So I want to make sure that there's policies for me in case I do cross over into that world. But your indicators tell you if culture is working. It's how many people stay. It's how many people grow. So this is where we start. To do this right, we have to focus on trust. We have to focus on access, and we have to focus most importantly, on accountability. In the veteran space alone, there is enough visibility, especially here for Veterans Day. There's coffee and donuts. There's free Bloomin' Onion at Outback. There's all these things that are out there. We're all doing these dog and pony shows at our companies. But what were we doing the 11 other months of the year? Were we taking care of these people? Is this a photo op? looking at accountability there. Are you like looking at your numbers? Are you above or below that 5.1% benchmark? Are you making the adjustments to change that every year? Are you holding your people accountable? If you're not hiring enough vets, is somebody going to talent acquisition and saying, hey, we don't have enough veterans or people with disabilities in the nightclub. You're the bouncer. We need to change this and educate you so you can pull these people out of the line. Are we holding HR accountable? Are we holding our veterans accountable for bringing in other vets? The people who are stakeholders in this, are they holding a stake or are they just waving another flag that we don't need? Again, we have more than enough visibility in both spaces. We don't have enough accountability. Hold your teams accountable.
Yeah, we came off. We're into Veterans Month. We just came off of a very busy NDEAM, so National Disability Employment Awareness Month, and we have a lot of the same conversations where companies put an emphasis on the disability space, the disability employment and hiring, and all those things in October. And we remind them there's never a bad time to talk about disability and approach these things. There's 12 months in a year. People are working in your workforce 12 months out of the year, right? So building that trust means creating safety to disclose, not just check the box, but tell their story, show up, and bring everything that they bring to the table. It means removing barriers in the systems and technology, auditing and assessing the technology and the systems you're using, the processes. And accountability means that leaders own the outcomes, and it's not all just siloed within HR. It has to be systemic through the company culture.
Nailed it. And this is another thing I say a lot. It takes a village to raise a great program. You need all the villagers engaged. A lot of times we'll work with your affirmative action plan, your equal opportunity people, your compliance folks, but they're not in charge of hiring. They're not in charge of culture. You need to get everyone on the same sheet of music. It's not just HR, as Meaghan mentioned. The thing with this is if you do this right, if you focus on building trust with your employees, if you focus on building equitable access for all employees, no matter whether they're a person with disabilities now or they get hit by that 1630 bus and they need it tomorrow, or it's the accountability of holding those people there. If you focus on these three arenas, it doesn't matter who's in office. If you focus on these, you'll be ahead of any regulation that comes about. Holding your people accountable, showing actionable measures, and showing results at the end of the day instead of just optics. We waved a flag at a golf tournament that funded another golf tournament that funded another golf tournament. Instead of showing actual results, that we went to this event, we talked to 50 vets, we hired 25, and we retained 20. That's what I want to see, not how many heroes you hugged or how many individuals with disabilities you said, I'm sorry, or whatever you're doing out there. So we need to be focusing on those three things: trust, access, accountability, and everything will go right.
Yeah, and doing it in a proactive way, right? So where you can look for opportunities and you can get ahead of gaps and you can, if you proactively identify some of those barriers, you're going to make it easier for yourself down the road. Compliance is something that opens doors, right? It creates opportunity because there are certain things we have to do. But it's the culture that keeps people inside. And like we said at the very beginning, both matter. They have to work together.
And Meaghan had said something earlier that I 100% agree with. For VEVRAA and Section 503, that's those two policies built the floor that we need to build on for equity. It's up to our leaders and all of you as leaders to build the structure that we have on top of that. We shouldn't be striving for or looking up to this benchmark. We should be looking at our people and the representation or what they bring to the table. Talk to your veterans, talk to your individuals with disabilities. Another thing that I found that we brought up in the other webinar, whenever I talk with organizations and veterans that work there, 80 to 85% of them ended up there on accident. It wasn't from your hero program or the job fair that you went to. It's because they found a back door and found their way in because they couldn't get through your ATS or they didn't get matched by some algorithm. So ask your people how they got in and be more intentional about those things. But it's leadership to build the structure on top of that floor that policy had set. If we keep looking up at the floor, that's the problem and why they're going to do away with self-identification, some of the stuff they're looking to chop now, because we're not doing a good job with the tools that we have in front of us.
Yeah, and yes, there are things that we have to do, things that have to be managed and, administrative pieces, but it can't all be owned by one person or one department. Like building the system within your company that crosses departments, crosses teams, will ensure that those efforts outlast the people in those roles, and then and really embed it in what the culture of the company is.
That's it. Do it for your people. For this one, kind of a reflection to every leader, everyone on this call. Ask yourself, what does trust look like where you work? And when does compliance become culture? Like reflecting of where do we make change in these things? But what does trust look like at your place of work? Do you have trust with your individuals? There was one of the chats that popped up is how do we measure that? One of the big ways that you can measure that is in your self-identification rate. It's if your people feel proud and announce that they want to self-identify. We may have a lot of people that self-disclose. They wear a Marine t-shirt and a veteran hat to work, but they haven't self-identified, and everybody has that guy that they're scratching their head on. When was the last time we had a conversation with that individual to find out what would compel them or what would make it? Is it upskilling tracks? Is it leadership abilities? Not just that you need my information to give to the government. The government has my information. I don't need it from you.
Yeah, and with that, how do you measure trust? I think it starts with the first question you just asked. You first have to know what it looks like, what trust looks like at your company. Like you can't measure it until you know what it's supposed to look like. But then it's also identifying who owns these outcomes, these inclusion outcomes at the organization. And are you measuring participation or true like cultural belonging efforts?
That word, the big O word, is ownership that Meaghan just mentioned. Like who owns these things? Who owns culture? Is it your site supervisors? Is it, on boots on the ground leadership? Is it overall leadership policies? Are you talking to your people? Are you getting out there and actually asking your veterans what they need, what they want, how they ended up there? Are we just making generalities or looking at the boilerplate stuff out there that we should hire veterans because they're hard workers and they're willing to do more with less? Let's make them a box kicker in a 90-degree warehouse when we know that they did something bigger than that. Like, who owns the outcomes and the inclusion initiatives around this? It's all ownership. And if you can answer these questions that are on here, 4 simple questions, honestly, you already know what your next step is. If you have an honest reflection with your leadership team, this isn't about egos or anything else. It's about getting stuff right for our people, our most important asset, and the only thing that is that detrimental to our business.
Yeah, for sure. And we don't have all the final answers yet. But as Rob mentioned earlier, that's not an excuse to sit back on your heels and wait for an outcome.
Lead now. If there's a pause in there, don't just wait and sit on your hands. Audit your systems. Use this opportunity to build trust and regain trust with your people and understanding. Prepare your culture for change. We're in a new world of work. We're in a new administration. A lot of things are changed. Executive Order 11246 is buried so deep in the ground that it will never come back. So we can't focus on where we've been, but we can change where we're going and what we do within our companies.
Yep. And doing that through how you lead and how you position your efforts and your messaging is going to help people feel confident in these uncertain times.
Absolutely. So as we sign off here at BufferSprings, simply we help smart employers build systems that are military effective, not just friendly. It's easy to be vet friendly or whatever it is out there. You have to just say that you are. As a matter of fact, BufferSprings is the most civilian friendly company, I would say, even in the world. I'm so civilian friendly that I married one and my children are civilians, but it doesn't make you want to do business with me. We have to look at being military effective and doing this for the right reasons and hiring veterans for what they bring to the table, skill wise, attribute wise, and not just for what they represent. The reality of it is, as I mentioned, I've been doing this work for 25 years and I've never met the same veteran twice. So all these boilerplate strategies of what vets are, they're even the branches of service are different. The Army and Navy are branches of service. The Air Force is a corporation and the Marine Corps is a cult. We have to look at all those different branches differently of how we talk and how we work with people because they're different animals altogether. I've never met the same service member or same military spouse twice. As Meaghan and I said, this is all about iceberging. Every veteran has a very deep iceberg on there that you may not understand until you go out there on the shop floor and ask your veterans, ask your people with disabilities, why do you work here? Why do you contribute to this mission? What keeps you coming every day? Until we answer those questions, we're just spinning our wheels, working on biases and generalities that are incorrect and dangerous.
Yeah, sorry, you just like opened a can of worms, and I'm sure there's a lot of people here that want to unpack on all the different service lines.
Coming up.
At CDI, we work with businesses to help them turn compliance into a cultural foundation. So it often starts with a conversation around the things that have to happen, and then we're able to work with them on the things that need to happen and should happen, all working towards an outcome of being an employer of a choice for people with disabilities. And so there's a lot that happens internally. And that's where we come in with our expertise and our team of experts to help the company move in that direction.
And together, I mean, CDI and BufferSprings get a chance to collaborate with, clients that we have crossover with, as well as just doing things like this to educate and empower the public of what's actually going on. But together, we're proving that compliance and culture can coexist. We can do things for the right interest of our people, but also keep the government off of our back and check the boxes that we need to. And that's when real inclusion happens, when both are done right, compliance and culture coexisting for the betterment of our people at the end of the day. So without further ado, our contact info is on here. I'm sure that NILG will share that as well. Mine's simply Rob at BufferSprings. Meaghan's information is on there as well. Connect with us on LinkedIn. Porch lights are always open for both of us, but I know we've unpacked some pretty provocative stuff. I know there's a lot of Q&A, and as you can tell, Meaghan and I don't have filters. We're going to let it all fly today. So let's ask some candid questions and get the Q&A rolling. So without further ado, we'll cruise right over to that. I'll leave our contact information up on the screen, but appreciate all of you marching with us. Let's get into the good, bads, and uglies. Let's hit us with